The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council glittered under the light of 3 artificial suns. The room hummed with whispers and soft laughter as representatives from 17 different species settled into their designated areas. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others perched on specialized seats designed for their unique body shapes, while a few simply stood on their multiple appendages. Council leader Jin tapped a silver rod against his podium, bringing the session to order. "Esteemed members, we have received interesting news from the Sol system." His voice carried a hint of amusement as he gestured toward the center of the chamber. A 3-dimensional hologram flickered to life, showing a small spacecraft. Its hull was patched in places, clearly made from recycled materials. Antennae and solar arrays jutted out at odd angles, and its propulsion system looked cobbled together from mismatched parts. "This," Jin announced with barely concealed mockery, "is humanity's first faster-than-light vessel. They call it the Terran Pride." A wave of laughter washed through the chamber. Ambassador Tull of the Crestian Empire, whose species had mastered space travel 5,000 years ago, leaned forward on his 6-limbed chair. "Such primitive design," he chuckled, his translucent skin rippling with blue patterns of amusement. "Are those actual metal plates on the outer hull? I haven't seen such materials used in spacefaring vessels since my ancestors first left our homeworld." Representative Mina of the Stellar Collective adjusted her breathing apparatus and squinted at the hologram. "They've used what appears to be modified fusion technology. My technical team estimates it would take their vessel at least 30 cycles to reach even the nearest habitable system." The Council's chief scientist, Dr. Han, manipulated the controls to rotate the hologram, revealing more details of the human ship. "Note the inefficient thruster placement, and these communication arrays are practically antiques. It's remarkable. They've achieved any form of faster-than-light travel at all." Ambassador Tull flicked 2 of his upper limbs dismissively. "A fluke, most likely. Their understanding of cosmic principles is elementary at best. Our records show they still debate basic physics on their home planet." "Perhaps we should send an observer to their system," suggested Representative Song of the Quantum Dominion. "It would be interesting to document their inevitable failure." More laughter rippled through the chamber as council members exchanged knowing looks. The humans were the newest species to reach for the stars, and by far the most backward. Most council races had evolved spacefaring technology over thousands of years, refining their vessels through countless generations. Humanity had barely left their planet a century ago. "Their single ship is built from scraps," noted Ambassador Gill, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the hologram. "Look at these energy readings. Barely enough to maintain life support, let alone achieve stable, faster-than-light travel." "Perhaps we should prepare a diplomatic greeting," suggested Representative Hyun, struggling to maintain a serious expression. "It would be proper protocol, after all." Her suggestion was met with more chuckles and head-shaking from her peers. "If they even arrive," responded Ambassador Tull, triggering another round of amusement throughout the chamber. "I predict system failure before they cross their own asteroid belt." Council leader Jin raised a hand for quiet. "Let us not be too harsh on our galactic neighbors. Every species starts somewhere." Despite his words, his tone held the same patronizing amusement as the others. "We shall monitor their progress and prepare appropriate responses should they somehow manage to leave their solar system." Throughout the lively discussion, one figure remained silent at the far end of the chamber. Elder Kang of the ancient Maldorian race sat motionless, his weathered skin like old parchment, his eyes, 3 cloudy orbs set in a triangular pattern, fixed on the hologram of the human ship. While others saw only a laughable attempt at space technology, Kang's gaze lingered on certain unusual aspects of the design. His species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the galaxy. They had learned long ago that innovation often came from unexpected places. Kang manipulated his private console with gnarled fingers, pulling additional data about Earth and its inhabitants. "Curious," he muttered too quietly for others to hear. "They've taken a completely different approach to the space-folding equations." He noted how the humans had arranged their drive coils in an unorthodox pattern that no other species had attempted. Whether from ignorance or inspiration, they had created something unique. As the council moved on to other matters, Elder Kang continued studying the limited data on human innovation with quiet interest. He had seen too much in his 300-year lifespan to dismiss any species outright. The humans built their ship differently, not because they chose to, but because they had to. Limited resources and a short developmental timeline had forced them to think beyond conventional approaches. The rest of the council might laugh, but Kang sensed something the others missed. In the strange design of that single human ship lay either spectacular failure or revolutionary success. Either way, he would watch with interest while his colleagues continued their amusement at humanity's expense. 3 cycles later, the peaceful routine of Centauri Prime Station was shattered by the sudden wail of proximity alarms. Red warning lights flashed throughout the massive space station as confused staff rushed to their stations. The central monitoring room erupted into chaos as operators stared at their screens in disbelief. "Unidentified vessel approaching from Sector 7, called out a technician, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. Station Commander Yoon pushed through the gathered personnel, his usually immaculate uniform hastily fastened. "Show me," he ordered, bracing himself against the main console. The massive view screen flickered to life, displaying a small spacecraft approaching the station at a measured pace. Its design was immediately recognizable to everyone in the room, the human vessel Terran Pride. "That's impossible," whispered Commander Yoon, checking the date on his personal device. "They shouldn't be here for at least 3 more weeks. Yet, there it was, the very ship the Galactic Council had laughed at just 3 cycles earlier, now requesting docking clearance at their most prestigious station. The vessel that supposedly couldn't even leave its own solar system had somehow traversed hundreds of light years in a fraction of the expected time. Word spread quickly throughout Centauri Prime. Council representatives who had dismissed the human achievement now found themselves rushing to prepare a proper reception. Diplomatic staff hurriedly consulted protocol guides for receiving new spacefaring species, while security teams scrambled to establish appropriate measures for the unexpected visitors. "How did they get here so fast?" demanded Ambassador Tool, his skin now flickering with patterns indicating stress rather than amusement. "Did anyone track their approach?" The station's chief navigator shook her head. "They simply appeared at the edge of our sensor range. One moment nothing, the next, they were there." Council Leader Jin adjusted his formal robes, trying to maintain his dignity despite the rush. "We must not appear unprepared. Humanity has clearly achieved something noteworthy, and we will receive them with the respect due to any spacefaring race." Meanwhile, in the central docking bay, engineers watched in stunned silence as the impossibly small human vessel performed a flawless docking maneuver. The Terran Pride was barely a quarter the size of the standard Council exploration vessels, yet it navigated the complex approach with precision that would make veteran pilots envious. As the docking clamps engaged, a mixed group of Council representatives assembled in the arrival area. They stood in their formal positions, trying to appear as though this had been planned all along, rather than hastily arranged in the past hour. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. After a moment's pause, Captain Kim stepped through, followed by her crew of 12 humans. They wore simple blue uniforms with minimal insignia, a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial dress of the Council delegation. What struck the watching aliens most was the humans' relaxed confidence. There was no wide-eyed wonder at the magnificent station, no nervous fidgeting or uncertainty. These weren't lucky travelers who had somehow stumbled across the stars. They moved with the calm assurance of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Captain Kim, a woman of average height with short black hair and alert eyes, approached the Council delegation. She stopped at a respectful distance and offered a slight bow. "Thank you for the welcome," she said with a warm smile. "We're honored to represent Earth." Council Leader Jin stepped forward, trying to hide his bewilderment behind formal pleasantries. "Captain Kim, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to Centauri Prime. Your arrival is earlier than anticipated." "Yes," replied Captain Kim with a slight tilt of her head. "Our calculations suggested this would be an efficient first. A journey. I hope we haven't disrupted your schedule too severely." Ambassador Tool couldn't contain himself. "How did you cross such a vast distance so quickly? Your ship's design shouldn't be capable of such speeds." One of the human crew members, a tall man with an engineer's insignia, smiled. "Sometimes the tortoise beats the hare," he said cryptically. While the formal reception continued in the main hall with carefully prepared speeches and ceremonial exchanges, a very different scene unfolded in the station's scientific wing. Chief Scientist Park and a team of the Council's best minds had been granted permission to scan the Terran Pride. "Their power consumption readings make no sense," whispered Park, staring at the data streaming across his screens. "It's impossible." He ran the analysis again, certain there must be some error. According to these readings, they used less energy, crossing hundreds of light years than we use in a standard orbital adjustment. His assistant pointed to another anomaly in the data. "And look at their drive signature. It doesn't match any known configuration. It's almost as if they're not pushing through space at all, but what?" demanded Park. The assistant struggled to find the words. "It's like they found a door where everyone else was trying to break through walls." Back in the reception hall, Captain Kim and her crew mingled with the Council representatives, answering questions with friendly but carefully measured responses. They shared stories of Earth, expressed interest in Council worlds, and graciously accepted the hastily arranged accommodations. No one mentioned how, just 3 cycles earlier, this same Council had dismissed their ship as a joke. No one needed. To the humans' presence on the station spoke volumes. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's one ship until it showed up. In his private quarters, Elder Kang reviewed the preliminary data on the Terran Pride with quiet satisfaction. He had seen something in that unusual design, something the others had missed. Now humanity had proven him right in the most dramatic way possible. "Not so primitive after all," he murmured to himself, watching through his window as the small Earth vessel sat proudly among the massive alien ships in the docking bay. "I wonder what other surprises they have in store for us." The following day saw a flurry of activity around Centauri Prime Station. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the unexpected early arrival of the Terran Pride, proposed a series of friendly demonstrations to properly welcome humanity to the galactic community. Behind closed doors, however, the Council's true motivation was transparent. They needed to understand how this seemingly primitive vessel had accomplished what should have been impossible. Standard evaluation protocols, Council leader Jin had called them. A tradition for new spacefaring species. Captain Kim and her crew agreed readily. "We'd be happy to participate," she said, with that same calm smile that had begun to unnerve. "Some Council members. Though our ship is quite modest compared to your impressive fleet, the first demonstration was scheduled at the edge of the Centauri system, a simple navigation challenge through an asteroid field. A dozen ships were selected to participate, including massive cruisers from the most advanced Council races. The Terran Pride, barely visible next to these behemoths, looked like a toy by comparison. Hundreds of officials and scientists gathered in the station's observation deck to watch the proceedings. Quiet wagers were exchanged among the spectators, most betting on which lap the human vessel would fall behind, or whether it would complete the course at all. "The human ship is positioned at a disadvantage," noted Ambassador Toole with satisfaction. "Their starting position puts them directly behind the wake turbulence from the Crestian cruiser." Elder Kang, seated in the back of the observation deck, simply watched without comment. At the signal, the ships launched into the course. The massive alien vessels powered forward with impressive acceleration, their enormous engines glowing brilliantly against the void. The Terran Pride started more modestly, seeming to drift rather than surge forward. "As expected," murmured Dr. Han, watching the initial telemetry. "Their acceleration is significantly lower than standard Council vessels." Then something unexpected happened. As the ships approached the first cluster of asteroids, the Terran Pride suddenly changed direction, not with the wide turning radius of conventional ships, but with an impossible pivot that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The human vessel slipped through gaps that other ships had to go around, its movements more like a fish in water than a vessel in space. By the halfway point, the observation deck had fallen completely silent. The human ship wasn't just keeping pace, it was leading the field. The Terran Pride navigated the asteroid belt with a grace that made the powerful alien ships look clumsy and awkward by comparison. "How are they doing that?" whispered Representative Mina, leaning forward in her seat. "Their directional changes don't match any known propulsion physics." When the results were tallied, the Terran Pride had completed the course in half the time of its nearest competitor. The human crew received the news with modest nods and thanks, as though they had expected nothing less. The second test, deep space sensor capabilities, yielded similar results. The third test, emergency response protocols, left the Council's best tactical minds speechless, as the human vessel performed maneuvers that their simulators had deemed theoretically impossible. That evening, a formal dinner was arranged in the station's grand hall. The mood was noticeably different from the reception days earlier. Gone was the condescending curiosity, replaced by genuine, if uncomfortable, respect. Captain Kim and her crew mingled with the Council representatives, fielding questions with disarming honesty. At the center of one particularly large group stood Engineer Lee, a quiet man with thoughtful eyes who headed the Terran Pride's technical division. "Your ship's performance today was unexpected," said Chief Scientist Park, choosing his words carefully. "Our preliminary scans suggest your vessel operates on principles quite different from conventional space travel." Engineer Lee nodded, sipping from his glass of blue Centaurian wine. "We didn't follow conventional paths," he explained. "Earth's resource limitations meant we couldn't build bigger. We had to build smarter." A hush fell over the gathered aliens as they leaned in to hear more. "Most spacefaring races follow similar developmental patterns," Lee continued. "As they master increasingly powerful energy sources, they build larger engines and larger ships. It's a natural progression when resources are abundant." "But not for humans," asked Representative Song. "Earth was already facing resource depletion when we discovered the principles of faster-than-light travel," Lee explained. "We couldn't afford to build massive ships or consume enormous amounts of fuel. Necessity forced us to look for alternatives." He placed his glass down and gestured with his hands, forming shapes in the air as he spoke. "The traditional approach to FTL travel is like using a battering ram on a door. Apply enough force and you'll break through. We looked for the key instead." The human team revealed they had discovered an entirely different method of traveling through space. While alien civilizations created massive engines consuming enormous fuel, humans perfected efficiency. Their breakthrough came not from greater power, but from a deeper understanding of space-time itself. "Your ships force their way through space," Engineer Lee continued, his voice quiet but clear in the silent hall. "Ours slips between the folds of reality, using minimal energy." The Council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The implications were staggering. If the humans had discovered a fundamentally different approach to space travel, one that was more efficient, more agile, and potentially more advanced, then centuries of Council technological development might have been heading in the wrong direction. "But how did you discover this method?" asked Dr. Han, his scientific curiosity overcoming his discomfort. "Our records show human physics is still developing basic unified field theories." Lee smiled. "Sometimes being late to the party has advantages. We didn't have preconceived notions about what was possible or impossible. We just followed the math, where it led us." Later that night, after the humans had retired to their quarters, an emergency session of the Council's Scientific Committee was convened. The data from the day's demonstrations was analyzed and reanalyzed, theories proposed and discarded. "It changes everything," Dr. Han told the assembled scientists. "If their approach is valid, and today's demonstrations suggest it is, we may need to reconsider fundamental aspects of our understanding." In his private chamber, Elder Kang reviewed the day's events with growing interest. Unlike his colleagues, he felt no discomfort at the human achievements. Instead, he felt a spark of excitement he hadn't experienced in decades. "They see the universe differently," he murmured, studying the flight path of the Terran Pride through the asteroid field. "And sometimes a different perspective is exactly what's needed." The humans had arrived not as students to be taught the ways of galactic civilization, but as innovators bringing fresh ideas to a community that had grown complacent in its assumptions. Their single ship, once a source of mockery, now represented a challenge to the established order, and possibly a new path forward for all. Captain Kim stood on the bridge of the Terran Pride, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the navigation console. The ship hummed beneath her feet as it tore through hyperspace toward Viridian 4. Just hours ago, they had been performing simple maneuvers for an unimpressed Galactic Council. Now they were racing toward a disaster zone, a human mining colony under attack by the most feared predatory species in the known galaxy. "Status report," she called, her voice steady despite the gravity of their mission. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. "Hyperspace transition in 17 minutes, Captain. We'll emerge at the edge of the Viridian system." Kim nodded and turned to her chief engineer. "Commander Chen, how are the modifications coming?" Chen wiped sweat from his brow, his uniform, sleeves stained with hydraulic fluid. For the past 3 hours, he and his team had been working frantically to repurpose the ship's systems. "We've converted the gravitational stabilizers to generate the resonance field," he reported. "It's not pretty, but it should work. The power couplings are holding at 83% efficiency. And the structural integrity field, reinforced to 150% around the critical systems. If we push harder than that, we risk burning out the entire power grid." Kim tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the command chair's armrest. "It'll have to be enough." The Terran Pride was not a warship. It was Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, designed to showcase human engineering and serve as their embassy among the stars. Elegant and efficient, but never intended for combat. Certainly not against the swarm. Dr. Patel approached from the science station, concern evident in her eyes. "Captain, I've analyzed all the data the Council provided on previous swarm encounters. It's not encouraging." "Give me the overview," Kim said. Patel brought up a holographic display showing insectoid creatures with segmented bodies and razor-sharp appendages. "The swarm is a non-sentient collective organism. Each individual is about the size of a large dog, but they operate as a unified entity. They consume all organic and many inorganic materials to fuel their reproduction. A small infestation can grow exponentially within hours." "Weaknesses?" asked Commander Park, the first officer. "They're highly sensitive to specific resonance frequencies," Patel replied. "That's been the only effective defense, but generating a field powerful enough to affect an entire colony would require multiple capital ships working in concert." Kim's expression remained determined, or one ship that thinks differently. She stood and addressed the entire bridge crew. "The Council dismissed us as primitives. They laughed when we offered help. They expect us to fail, or more likely to turn around once we realize what we're facing." Her eyes moved from one crew member to another. "But Earth has a long history of facing superior forces. We've learned that victory doesn't always require matching your enemy's strength. Sometimes it requires changing the rules of engagement." The tactical console beeped urgently. Rodriguez looked up. "Incoming transmission from Council Leader Ryu." "On the screen," Kim ordered. The view screen flickered to life, showing the elegant silver-skinned figure of the Arcadian leader. His expression was difficult to read, but his tone carried a mixture of concern and condescension. "Captain Kim, our sensors indicate your vessel is proceeding at maximum velocity toward Viridian 4. I must emphasize that this situation is far more dangerous than you appear to understand." Kim met his gaze evenly. "We understand the threat. Council Leader, we're proceeding as planned. Captain, the swarm has overwhelmed 3 of our defense cruisers in past encounters. Your vessel is not equipped for this confrontation. I'm sending you the most recent scans of the colony. The infestation is already at level 4. The display split to show devastation spreading across the mining outpost. Buildings were partially consumed, strange organic structures growing over the human-made facilities. Movement could be seen. Everywhere, thousands of swarm creatures swarming over every surface. The colony's automated distress systems indicate 47 survivors have barricaded themselves in the central processing facility," Ryu continued. "But the structure is already compromised. Our models predict total infestation within 5 hours. Your ship cannot arrive for at least 4. "Then we'll have to work quickly," Kim replied. Terran Pride out. The transmission ended, and Kim turned back to her crew. Let's prove them wrong. All hands prepare for combat operations. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of activity. Throughout the ship, crew members worked to implement Kim's unorthodox strategy. Standard equipment was repurposed, power systems rerouted, and protocols modified. Lieutenant Wang at Communications shook her head in amazement as she monitored Council frequencies. "They're taking bets on whether we'll even attempt a rescue or just observe and retreat," she reported with disgust. "Let them bet," Kim replied. "History is written by survivors." Commander Park approached with a tablet showing their modified battle plan. "The resonance field is our primary weapon, but we'll only get one shot at full power. After that, the systems will need at least 30 minutes to recharge." "Then we make it count," Kim said firmly. "What about the mining facility's sonic excavation? Equipment? If any units are still intact and accessible through the colony's network, we can remotely activate them," Park confirmed. "They won't be powerful enough to kill the swarm, but they might disrupt their coordination temporarily." The navigator's voice interrupted them. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, Captain." Kim returned to her command chair. "Battle stations, shields at maximum." The starfield outside the viewport stretched and then snapped back to normal. As the Terran Pride emerged at the edge of the Viridian system. In the distance, the mining planet loomed, a dusty red world with the ugly scar of human industry visible even from orbit. "Colony in visual range," announced Rodriguez. "Swarm infestation. Appears to have spread to 68% of the outpost." "Life signs?" Kim asked tensely. Dr. Patel studied her scanner, confirming 39 human life signs detected in the central facility. They're alive, but biosigns are weak. Environment systems must be failing. "Swarm is reacting to our presence," warned Rodriguez. "Multiple organisms converging on the ship's projected landing zone." Kim nodded grimly. "They're adapting already. Bring us in fast, maximum atmospheric velocity. Chen, prepare the resonance field for wide dispersal. We need to clear a landing zone." The ship plunged toward the planet, its sleek hull glowing red-hot, as it tore through the atmosphere. Below, the mining colony came into sharp focus, a nightmarish scene of destruction. The orderly human settlement was now half consumed by an organic, hive-like structure that pulsed with movement. "Colony Central. Facility has detected our approach," Wang reported excitedly. "They're transmitting, 'For God's sake, help us.' They're breaking through the inner doors." Kim's jaw tightened. "Tell them to hold on. Help is coming." She turned to her engineer. "Chen, status of the resonance field?" "Charged to 91%, Captain." "That's as good as it's going to get. Target the densest concentration of swarm activity between our position and the central facility. Narrow focus, maximum intensity." The Terran Pride swooped low over the colony, its shadow racing across the infested landscape. Below, thousands of swarm creatures surged upward, sensing the ship's approach. "They're trying to reach us," Park observed. "Their adaptive capabilities are remarkable." "Fire the resonance field," Kim ordered. "Now!" The ship shuddered as energy surged through its modified systems. A visible wave of distortion erupted from the underside of the vessel, racing outward in a focused cone. When it struck the ground, the effect was immediate and devastating. Swarm creatures caught in the field convulsed violently. Their segmented bodies vibrated at increasing speeds until they literally tore themselves apart. The resonance cascaded through their collective network, each destroyed creature amplifying the effect on those connected to it. "Direct hit," Rodriguez announced triumphantly. "Swarm density in the target zone reduced by 78%. "It worked," breathed Dr. Patel, staring at her readings in amazement. "The resonance is disrupting their neural network. They can't coordinate." Kim allowed herself a small smile. "Land immediately. Rescue teams, prepare for deployment. We have minutes at most before they reorganize." The Terran Pride settled onto the colony's landing pad with a heavy thud. Outside, the remaining swarm creatures scattered in disarray, their collective intelligence temporarily fragmented by the resonance attack. "Rescue teams, move out," Kim ordered through the ship-wide. "Communica extraction teams 1 and 2 proceed to the central facility. Engineering team, deploy the portable resonators at 30-meter intervals along the route." On the external cameras, Kim watched as her crew raced across the colony grounds. They moved with purpose and precision, placing small devices that emitted localized resonance fields to keep the swarm at bay. The path to the central facility was clear for now, but already swarm creatures were beginning to regroup at the edges of their vision. "Captain," Wang called urgently, "I'm detecting a new swarm formation behind the central facility. They're massing for an attack on the survivors' position. Can we get a lock on it with the ship's field projector?" Kim asked. Chen shook his head. "Not from this angle, and the system needs 20 more minutes to recharge for another full discharge." Kim thought quickly. Access the colony's mining equipment. Activate any sonic drills in that sector. Park worked rapidly at his console. Connecting to Colonial Network, 3 operational drills detected in the eastern quadrant. Activating now. On the tactical display, they watched as mining equipment came to life, sending powerful sonic pulses through the ground. The swarm mass recoiled from the disturbance, buying precious time. "First survivors being evacuated now," Rodriguez reported, monitoring the rescue team's progress. 23 colonists secure, 28, 34. Everyone on. The bridge held their breath as the numbers climbed. Outside, the swarm was recovering, its collective intelligence adapting to the resonance frequencies. "They're learning," warned Dr. Patel. "The resonators are becoming less effective with each passing minute." "Rescue teams double time," Kim ordered. "All colonists secured." "Affirmative," came the response through static. "All 39 survivors recovered, returning to ship now." Kim nodded to Rodriguez. "Prepare for emergency launch as soon as the teams are aboard." The minutes that followed were tense. On the monitors, they watched the rescue teams racing back toward the ship, helping injured colonists along the path of portable resonators. Behind them, the swarm surged forward, moving faster as it adapted to the disruptive frequencies. "Last team is aboard," Rodriguez finally announced. "Sealing airlock now." "Lift off immediately," Kim ordered. "Maximum thrust." The Terran Pride roared to life, engines straining as it pushed away from the infested colony. Below them, the landing pad disappeared under a wave of swarm creatures, reaching upward as their prey escaped. As they broke atmosphere, a collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Kim allowed herself to relax slightly, looking around at her exhausted but triumphant crew. "Set course back to the council station," she instructed, "and prepare the survivors for medical treatment." Hours later, as the ship approached the gleaming Galactic Council Station, Communications Officer Wang looked up with surprise. "Captain, we're being hailed by the entire Council Assembly. They're requesting our presence in the main chamber immediately upon docking." Kim smiled tiredly. "Tell them we'll be there, after our medical team has treated all survivors." The high message she sent back was clear. Humans had their own priorities, and they had just proven they deserved respect. As the Terran Pride glided toward the docking bay, the ship's external cameras showed something unprecedented. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the observation gallery, watching their approach. Not with condescension this time, but with newfound curiosity and perhaps, just perhaps, a glimmer of respect. The Grand Council Station hummed with activity as delegates from 17 species gathered on the observation deck. They pressed against the viewports, some using vision-enhancing devices, others lifting smaller members of their delegation for a better view. All eyes focused on the approaching ship. The Terran Pride emerged from the darkness of space, moving slowly toward the docking bay. Its once gleaming hull was now scorched black in places. Deep gouges marked its port side, where something had clearly tried to tear through the metal. One of its stabilizer fins was completely missing, but it was flying, and it wasn't alone. Behind, the Pride trailed 5 crewed vessels that barely deserved the name ships. They appeared to be mining equipment, or processors, atmospheric harvesters, and transport modules, hastily welded together and somehow made space-worthy. "Remarkable," whispered Delegate Shin of the Telsuri Collective, their translucent skin pulsing with blue light that indicated deep emotion. "They actually saved the colonists." "And built escape vessels from mining equipment," added Ambassador Vorla, her 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession. "In 3 days." Council Leader Ryu remained silent, his silver features impossible to read. But he had not left the observation deck for 27 hours, waiting for the ship that most council members had assumed was lost. The Terran Pride docked with a hiss of equalization jets, the makeshift fleet awkwardly following its lead. Medical. Teams rushed forward as the airlocks opened, prepared for the worst. What emerged surprised them all. The colonists were not only alive, but relatively healthy. Many showed signs of injury and exhaustion, yes, but they walked on their own power, some even helping the medical teams guide the more seriously wounded. Following them came the crew of the Terran Pride, their uniforms dirty and torn, but their posture straight and proud. Last to exit was Captain Kim. She looked thinner than she had 3 days ago, with a fresh scar running along her jawline and dark circles under her eyes. But she moved with purpose, nodding briefly to the medical teams before heading straight to where Council Leader Ryu waited. "Captain Kim," Ryu acknowledged with a formal bow. "The Council awaits your report." Kim returned. The bow. "The swarm has been neutralized," she said simply. No fanfare, no elaborate explanation. Just 5 words that should have been impossible. Ryu's eyes widened slightly, the most emotion many had ever seen from the typically stoic Arcadian. "Neutralized? Not contained?" "Neutralized," Kim repeated. "Completely." Whispers erupted throughout. The observation deck. The swarm had never been defeated before, merely driven off at tremendous cost. Even the most advanced battle fleets had only managed to contain infestations, never eliminate them entirely. The council chamber, Ryu decided. Immediately. Within an hour, the emergency session began. The council chamber, normally arranged, with careful attention to diplomatic hierarchy and alliance structures, was chaotic. Delegates crowded forward, ignoring traditional seating arrangements in their eagerness to hear the human captain's report. Captain Kim stood in the center of the chamber, now wearing a fresh uniform. Commander Park stood at her side, along with Dr. Patel and Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Tell us everything," demanded Elder Trill of the Vesperian Dominion. "How did one ship accomplish what entire fleets could not?" Kim activated a small projector she had brought with her. A 3-dimensional image appeared in the air, a detailed schematic of the Terran Pride. "When we departed this station 3 days ago," she began, "we knew we couldn't match the swarm's numbers or adaptability. We needed a different approach entirely." She zoomed in on the ship's propulsion system. Humans have always been particularly good at repurposing technology. Our history is filled with examples of taking existing tools and using them in ways their creators never imagined. Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Our analysis of previous swarm encounters showed that resonance disruption was effective, but required massive energy output across multiple ships. We didn't have multiple ships, so we needed to multiply our impact." The schematic shifted to show the modified systems. "We converted our Mendel-Chen propulsion system to generate a cascading resonance field," Kim continued. "In simple terms, we turned our engine inside out. Instead of using energy to move our ship, we projected it outward in specific frequencies." "But that would have disabled your vessel completely," objected Engineer Delegate Zorn. "The power requirements alone would have burned out our systems after a single use," Commander Park confirmed. "Which is exactly what happened. We arrived at Viridian IV, rescued the colonists, and then executed the final phase of our plan." Kim nodded to Rodriguez, who advanced the projection to show the mining colony. "The swarm operates as a unified neural network. Disrupt it temporarily and it recovers. Disrupt it completely." The projection showed the Terran Pride hovering at the center of the colony. Energy waves pulsed outward in ever-widening circles as the ship's reactor core glowed, dangerously bright. "You overloaded your reactor?" gasped a delegate from the back. "Controlled overload," Kim corrected. "Channeled through the modified propulsion system and calibrated to the exact frequency that would shatter the swarm's neural connections. We essentially created a resonance bomb that destroyed their collective consciousness. The resulting energy surge disabled most of our ship's systems," added Park. "We spent the next 2 days making minimal repairs, while the colonists assembled evacuation vessels from the mining equipment that survived." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't merely escaped with the survivors. They had deliberately sacrificed their ship's functionality to eliminate the threat entirely. "So you know what this means," said Elder Voss of the Quantum Meritocracy, his gravelly voice breaking the silence. "If the resonance disruption truly works at that scale, we could protect countless worlds from the swarm." "With the right modifications, yes," Kim agreed. "We've prepared detailed reports on the resonance frequencies and delivery systems. With your more advanced technology, you could likely create more efficient versions." Council Leader Ryu stepped forward, studying the human captain carefully. "You offer this freely? Technology that could save billions of lives across the galaxy?" Kim looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Of course. What else would we do with it?" That simple response seemed to affect the council members more deeply than any grand speech could have. Throughout the chamber, delegates exchanged glances, some appearing embarrassed, others thoughtful. Elder Kang, the oldest member of the council, and rarely one to speak during sessions, rose slowly from his seat. The ancient Zenthori's voice quavered, but carried clearly through the chamber. "We laughed at their one ship," he said. "Now we learn from it. This is how galaxies evolve." The formal vote that followed was unprecedented in council history, unanimous approval for Earth's full membership, with additional provisions granting immediate access to advanced technology and resources for developing a human fleet. As the session concluded, Ambassador Song of the Terran Diplomatic Corps found herself surrounded by representatives from a dozen species, all pressing data crystals into her hands, technology-sharing offers, alliance proposals, trade agreements. "I don't understand," she whispered to Captain Kim as they left the chamber together. 3 days ago, they were placing bets on how quickly we'd retreat. Now they're falling over themselves to form alliances." Kim smiled tiredly. "People respect solutions, not specifications. Our ship wasn't impressive on paper, but we solved a problem no one else could." In the days that followed, the impact of the Terran Pride's mission rippled across the galaxy. News traveled faster than light through the Council's communication network. Humans, the primitive newcomers with their single outdated ship, had defeated the swarm, not contained it. Defeated it. Research teams from 17 species began studying the resonance technology. Military strategists incorporated human-style improvisation into their tactical simulations. Engineering guilds examined the crude but effective evacuation vessels the colonists had constructed, marveling at the ingenuity born of desperation. In a quiet moment between diplomatic meetings, Captain Kim found herself alone with Commander Park on an observation deck, looking out at the bustling station where a new docking bay was already being constructed, reserved specifically for Earth's future fleet. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Park asked, gesturing at the activity around them. "When we left Earth as our planet's only representatives, I thought we'd be lucky to get trading rights with a minor species." Kim shook her head. "I hoped we'd prove ourselves worthy of membership. I never expected—" She trailed off, watching as a Dravidi engineering team carefully examined the scorched hull of the Terran Pride, documented every battle scar with almost reverent attention. "They're studying our damage patterns," Park observed, "learning how we survived." "That's the greatest human trait," Kim replied quietly. "Not our technology or our strength, but our adaptability, our willingness to try the impossible when the conventional fails." Across the station, in the Council's private chamber, Ambassador Song found herself invited to a gathering previously closed to non-members. Elder Kang himself poured her a glass of Zenthori luminescent wine, a gesture of profound respect. "Ambassador," he said softly, his ancient eyes focused intently on her, "I must confess something that troubles my conscience." "Elder," she prompted, gently, "when your ship first arrived at this station, I advised the Council to deny your membership petition without consideration." His wrinkled face showed genuine regret. "I argued that a species with only one interstellar vessel could not possibly contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization." Song smiled. "Many felt the same, Elder. You shouldn't—" "And to think," he interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper, "we almost missed it completely. We nearly turned away the very innovation we most needed." He raised his glass in a toast, the luminescent liquid casting a soft glow between them. to humanity's. Legacy, he said. May it teach us all to look beyond appearances and numbers to the true measure of a civilization, its heart, its mind, and its courage. Throughout the station, similar conversations took place as the galaxy's oldest and most advanced species reconsidered everything they thought they knew about the newcomers from Earth. The species once mocked for their single ship had become the species everyone wanted as an ally. And aboard the damaged but treasured Terran Pride, engineers already worked on the next innovation because humans never stopped adapting, never stopped imagining what might be possible. That was their true legacy, not the ship, but the spirit it represented.